Hello and welcome to another EU5 video. It does feel weird calling it EU5 now, even though I've been calling it EU5 for over a year now. It does feel weird to say it and actually have it confirmed. So maybe I'm actually going to start calling it Project Caesar. I don't know. We gotta buck the trend somehow. But either way, EU5 was officially announced a couple of days ago, and I made a video at the time. Totally did not kind of release it, 12 hours or 24 hours early. That did it did happen, and we're going to get into that, and I'm going to explain what happened and why it happened and all that. We're going to get into that. But I asked at the end of that video, basically for your questions. I asked you to give me whatever you wanted to have answered, and I would answer the questions that you asked. Yeah, it's an AMA, a question and answer. It's a bunch of acronyms, whatever. So that's this video, and I guess we're gonna start off with this one from Retro Live. What are some net improvements from EU4 to EU5 that I immediately noticed? We'll split this question into two because there's two questions here. Um, Immediate net improvements from EU4 to EU5. I mean, the obvious one is population system. It is so prevalent and all encompassing, and it is not just a net improvement, it is a colossal improvement by orders of magnitude, right? I've made no secret of my disdain for the development system. I've made don't mistake me when I say I hate the mana system in EU4 because I do. I have played 10,000 hours in that game in spite of the huge glaring problems that I see with it, and those problems are not there in EU5. And that's great. It truly is awesome. Um, so those have got to be my net improvements that I got to immediately talk about. But another thing is just the changes to the estate system. I did not think it was going to be feeling quite so different as it actually ends up feeling. Like in EU4, you do have, these standard estates, you give up the standard privileges that you do in every game, and then you go on, and then eventually you want to get rid of them. And essentially, that does still happen. But the estates are so much more prevalent in your gameplay in EU5 compared to EU4, right? EU4, you set them, you forget them. In EU5, you set them, and then they keep popping up and making demands. And honestly, even just the estates constructing buildings themselves is huge. Like, I have the outliner, I've got my list of buildings that I'm building, and maybe I run out of money or at some point, and then I notice, oh, I've now got, you know, 12, 15, whatever buildings over on my right hand panel that my burgers are constructing. And that does feel good. It feels like the world is kind of alive. And it is a good feeling. It is a good feeling. Um, I don't know if that is immediately noticed because it took some time for the burgers to, amass that wealth enough to build those buildings, but it happened and it did feel good. Is there anything from EU4 that I desperately miss in the current version? Hotkeys, essentially UI things. I don't think I'm a huge fan of having all of the UI map mode buttons on the very bottom of the screen. I think that area should really just be left completely blank, and I would much prefer if all of those map modes were put on the right hand side in the bottom right corner where they were in EU4. Um, I miss the fact that I you can change map mode hotkeys. You can change any hotkeys really. So I put political map mode on W, and then I'm thinking, well, what else in EU4 do I have on the W key? Well, if I press W once, it goes to the political map mode. If I'm not there right now, if I press it twice, it goes to the coalition map mode. So antagonism in EU5, and then if I press it again, it goes to the player map mode. But unfortunately, in EU5, that's not possible. You can only map one map mode to one key, and that's not great for me. I'm a bit of a creature of habit. I prefer keeping things exactly as they are, if in some cases. And for things like UI, I do think there are certain elements of EU5 that are just net negatives and net, you know, the opposite of improvement, a disimprovement, a regression, maybe. And I think some of the UI elements are really just, if you're going to change something in your sequel, it's got to change for the better, and you shouldn't just change things for the sake of changing things. And I'm sure that they feel that it is better, but in gameplay, and especially like in the creators Discord where we were reporting all of our issues and bugs and UI problems, like UI was the largest section, and a lot of us did make complaints about it. So yeah, the thing I miss is easy access UI hotkey thingamabobs. That kind of thing was sorely missed. One here from King's Gambit and J Jace. Is blobbing an issues? Conquest looks very easy. Am I an expert or is it just a free for all? Look, in the current game, antagonism feels like it needed a bit of work. You get very little antagonism for conquering locations of your own culture, and in my Florence game, a lot of the provinces I was conquering were Tuscan, and even though they were in the HRE, although actually the stuff to the north was not part of the HRE, it was not really giving as much aggressive expansion and antagonism as you might expect from EU4, and I feel like that is definitely a thing, right? The antagonism does need to be looked at and made a little bit more restrictive. Another issue with it was, I believe, a bug where a province or a location, whatever, that you conquer started with 100 control. And when this was noticed in the creative Discord, it was reported, and essentially there was a little bit of a back and forth where someone argued that maybe it should be like that. The soldiers are there, you're exerting the control with the soldiers that you just conquered, and the people wouldn't want to rise up. But control isn't just about people rising up against you. It's also about how much wealth can I extract from this location? How much taxes can I get these people to pay? All that kind of thing. And yeah, it does not make sense, I believe, that you would start with 100. Starting at whatever the equilibrium point will be seems like a really good idea, in my opinion. So if this province that I've just conquered would eventually, it starts at 100, but it would eventually go down to 26.3. Maybe it should start at 26.3. And I believe Johan also commented on that thread saying that it was a bug and it should not be like that, and etc. So, that's kind of one of the things that makes blobbing a little too easy, in that you get the maximum amount of benefit from a conquered province instantly, and that is not good. There is also, I believe, a video where I think it was Levik that essentially used the cultural systems to core province and then immediately unaccept or disaccept or whatever, non-tolerate a culture that he'd used to get cores, and that kept the cores, and that's kind of awkward as well. I think for my video specifically, I wasn't conquering anywhere that wasn't, an immediately accepted or tolerated culture, right? As Florence, I had Tuscans and Medians, and I was happy with both. And I think while I did conquer a little too fast, and I do think it is too fast in the wider gameplay as well, it is something that is going to change by release. Coalitions did form, but never fired against me, and from what I have heard, when a coalition does fire, you are able to separate piece every individual member. I think that should go away. I'm not a big fan of that. So hopefully blobbing, the ease of conquest will not be there by the time the game releases finally for you guys. That's my hope, at least. In this video, you went to war what feels like a lot. So yeah, I went to war 3 times in the, I guess, 13 years that I had played. And essentially, that final war was not something I was planning on. It was just my parliament came back up, and whatever, why not? I'll just do it real quick. I had planned to end the video after the Black Death, and then I guess the Black Death just kind of like lingered a bit long, and it came up, so I went to war again. Um, the I did ended up playing on in that campaign until for another 10 or so years, and um, I believe I went to war one more time after that, and then I felt like I was pretty blocked from expansion. Alliance chains and antagonism was getting a little high, and all that kind of thing. But do I go to war as much or more than EU4? No, no, not at all. It just turns out that again, with the antagonism being a little iffy and the control being a little iffy, that it was in the version that we could play, we were able to go to war a bit faster, um, or a bit too frequently. We were able to take more, but the amount that you go to war is, I would say, less. It is harder to go to war initially. Right, you're not going to be in E4. You're going to war on the 11th of December, right? You wait your month and then you go to war. Here, I don't think any countries are really doing that. Either you're waiting for that Senate, Parliament thing to come up, in which case you can ask to go to war, or you are no CBing, or maybe you have a special CB if you're a special snowflake country. I believe Serbia had one to go to war with the Romans. But generally, you're prevented from going to war fast. I do think sometimes wars happen too fast. For example, my second war, where I essentially conquered 3 countries in the space of 2 weeks, because of no forts. That's, I think, an outlier. That's generally not going to happen. And if that was a normal war, that would have taken longer, and it would have been, yeah, you're not going to go to war as much if their wars are kind of more difficult and painful. But I don't think the game is all about war, and also a lot of the in between parts, right? Between going to war and then managing my country. I didn't want to show that again, right? I'd already shown me building buildings and doing some trade, and I wanted to show new things, and so essentially a lot of that was cut out. I only had 30 minutes of video to show, and I needed to, cut a lot out, right? It took me a lot longer than 30 minutes to play those 13 years. So there is more than war. A lot of that did get cut out, basically due to time constraints. Yeah, so this is a big one, and I had multiple people asking about it. What is the performance like, essentially? What are my specs? How did it run on my PC? Etc. So for context, let's start with my own specs. I have an NVIDIA RTX 3060 Ti. I have for my CPU, Ryzen 5 5600. And the day that I got access to the game, I upgraded to 32 gigs of RAM. Did it run perfectly on my computer? No, it didn't. Did I expect it to? No. This is a very early build of the game. I would say, alpha and beta don't really mean anything nowadays, but let's say it's a beta version of the game before optimization has been done. And Johan has already said on the forums that creators have never been given access to the game this early. Optimization is something that will come, and it will be better. There was also a comment that I remember seeing, and I don't believe I've actually taken a picture of it, that the game looks worse graphically, and that is because one of the fixes that I believe Chewy Shoot found was to turn the graphical rendering down to 80%. We're all on things like medium settings and turning the graphics down, and basically that made it run very reasonably. And so, yeah, the game did look worse than what it looked like when I had everything cranked to the max. But that was purely so that the game was playable. There was still performance issues for me, especially going past 1360 for me was very, very difficult because there was also, I believe, a memory leak. Essentially, the longer I played, the worse the performance got. As well, if I tabbed out to go on Discord or go on, you know, anything else, um, the game didn't like being re-enabled or remade into the, you know, primary window that I'm looking at. So performance is not there yet. It truly isn't. But again, the game is super, super early. The version we played is super, super early. Optimization will happen, and it will get better. It will get better. What I will say is the tick speed, especially when you just start the game, it is pretty nice. I don't see it as being too slow. I know that a lot of people were like, you know, speed 5 addicts. They just go speed 5 whenever they want to, whenever they can. I think Leif said that he does speed 5 all the time. I don't. So I don't really experience what speed 5 was like in the game at all. I don't think I ever went higher than speed 4. And that's not because I couldn't, but because I chose not to. It's not something that entered my mind. It's something I wanted to do. I always had something there that wanted me to be at speed 2, 3, or 4. And it felt fine, other than the issues that I previously mentioned. Automatic asks here, I assume we're allotted 30 minutes of time to play and record the game at Tinto. Nope, I recorded all this at home. Everything in my video is from home. When I went to Tinto at the end of March, essentially what happened was we were shown a bit of a presentation, and then because there weren't a ton of computers, we were given like time slots where we could go and play the game. And I think there was maybe 6 computers, and including the traditional press that was there was maybe like 30 people who went to visit, and I was on the very final time slot. Basically, we were supposed to only have, I think, 35 or 40 minutes, 35, 45 minutes to play. Because I was on the final time slot, I got lucky and I managed to play for an hour. And I played the Eastern Roman Empire and understood absolutely nothing. Other than the fact that the Romans seem to be a harder start than they are in EU4 somehow, which is kind of crazy to me. But that's what happened there. But no, afterwards we were told we were going to get access at home, and then about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the video went live, we got that access, and yeah, we got to play at home on our own systems and enjoyed that very much. Some people managed to play more than others. Unfortunately for me, my parents happened to come and visit from overseas and stay in my house the day that I got access. I had to go pick them up from the airport about an hour after I started installing the game, and they left about 8 hours before I lost access. So I did not get to play nearly as much as I had hoped. But at the end of the day, I still managed to get myself around 75, 80 hours. Someone like Generalist Gaming, I believe, had like 150, 180, something like that. He went pretty hard. I wish I could have played more, but unfortunately, that's just reality. Just life. Matta here. First of all, really appreciate the EU5 videos. I thank you. I appreciate that as well. I appreciate the comment. All right. Did I ask about the performance issues? I've already talked about that, so don't worry about that one. How confident am I that they're optimizing the game in time? I don't know how much optimization they're going to do, because I have no clue about that side of game design. I'm confident that they will optimize the game. Will it be to the level where people who play EU4 can play EU5? I don't think so. I think I think there will probably still be a struggle for people on lower end PCs to play EU5. I do not think the people who are going in EU4 Workshop to download the Potato PC mod are going to be able to play the game. I truly don't. What I will say is, though, that the paper map is probably your best friend. You do not have to play with the full rendered terrain map. It's not necessary, and there is an option for that. And what I found was that the terrain map was actually probably the biggest source of performance issues. There are options in the game settings where you could choose what type of map you wanted to look at. You could have permanently the paper map. You could have permanently the terrain map at any zoom level. You could have it so that you had terrain map for only your country and anything that you had vision on. So fog of war would always be paper. You could have it so that paper map was everywhere, etc. Like, there was a bunch of options, and I quite like seeing the terrain. So for performance reasons, I had it so that everything in fog of war was paper map. I could have had it as terrain, and on release, if the optimizations get put in place, I will probably play with terrain everywhere, because I do prefer it. I think it looks better. So, from my experience, when does the game start to get performance issues? It really doesn't matter that much. Like, again, the optimization is going to happen, and I guess, from my experience, 1360 is when the game became a little bit hard to play. But it's really not going to be relevant for the release of the game. Hell, it's not even relevant now. I do not have access to the game. I'm sure that when I do get access again, a lot of things will have changed performance-wise. I'm excited to see what those performance changes are. I really am. How does the user experience and user interface feel? This is an awkward one, because there are certain elements of the UI that I don't particularly like. I mentioned already the map modes. I also am not a massive fan of the hotkeys. Not the hotkeys, but the control groups, right? By default, your control groups, like 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever, is set to being these international organizations, and that will leave you with huge buttons on the bottom of your screen that I'm sure somebody has made a reference to Victoria 3's, mobile game finger press button bottom of the screen doodads that look kind of bad. I don't like that they're down there, and I would much prefer that these hotkey buttons move somewhere. I can't remember if I have it in my own video, but it's playing in the background, so you can see that if you can. Things like the Guelphs and Ghibellines are down there, the Catholic Church is down there, the Holy Roman Empire is down there, and any union that you end up forming goes down there as well. You can right-click to turn them off. You just can. And you can still enter those interfaces by going into diplomacy, then organizations, and then specifically typing in membership. So you can see all of the organizations that you are a member of. And that kind of works. But also, these control groups can be things like, I now have a professional army, so I'm going to control group 1, my army, and now I've got a big button on the bottom of my screen, and it doesn't look like that's going to be movable, which is a little bit unfortunate. But as for general UX, some of the things seemed a little bit small, seemed a little bit hidden away. For example, I ended up in a regency council, and I couldn't tell when my regency was going to end. I couldn't tell who my ruler was going to be after that regency ended, and that was especially important because you can see a child's stats as they grow up. They get higher and higher, and they have an education, and you can choose that education. You can choose for them to have a more martial, a more administrative, a more diplomatic education. You can also say to spend more money on their education. It costs 250 ducats, and end up increasing the cost of your court by about 2%. And that was really good. Now, it was doing that with every one of my ruler's heirs. But as soon as I entered a Regency Council, I couldn't find my heir to do that with. I couldn't, for a long time, see when that Regency was going to end. I had to ask in the Discord about it, was told where to find that, and it was a little button that was on the character's, the Regent's portrait thing. And it just felt a little clunky to find that, and apparently I wasn't the only one. It was reported a few times, so hopefully that is going to get looked at. But there was a lot of those small things that I guess really could have been done a little bit better. A lot of little clunky user experience things, but the creators that were in that Discord were pretty prolific about sharing their quibbles with the game, right? Like I say, the UI section of there was pretty prevalently, talked about and stuff. So I do think a lot of these things are going to be fixed, going to be made better, and the next time I get my hands on the game, I expect it to look a bit different in that regard. So that's cool. Vispian here, great video, thank you very much. Would love to see more types of videos if I get the chance to make more. I will be getting more access, I have been told. But here, how does your first game compare to your last? Well, my first game was in Paradox Tinto itself, in Sitges, and I played as the Eastern Roman Empire, and I just failed a lot. I went bankrupt. You started with like 1,000 ducats of debt, basically zero legitimacy, basically, zero stability, and you were expected to get rid of a bunch of hugely, powerful privileges, and it was rough. And I don't recommend starting as the Eastern Roman Empire when you're learning the game. I did it essentially because it was the meme, right? I am one of the Romaboos apparently, and I had to look at the Eastern Roman Empire, of course. What mistakes did I make, and what would I tell yourself now going into that first game? don't play them. Play something with more food. Play something with more population. Play something with more potential and less problems as your very first game. I will say Italy, when I first got the game at home, Italy was not that place because there was a problem with food generation, food collection, and Italy just starved every single game because the amount of cities that Italy had compared to its rural population was, let's say, not great. And I ended up making a ticket about that saying, Italy is completely unplayable right now, which is a shame because I thought Italy was going to be the great learning experience, the place to learn the game. But there was a fix that was added, and I was given a line to add into the actual code itself in the files that Johan gave me so that I could go in and do that. Which basically made it so that every percentage point of development a location has, it made 1% more food. And that actually fixed it completely. It was a great change, and I'm glad that I got that line of code to add to the game. I feel pretty accomplished about that, but really it was just open a text file and add a line. But yeah, I went a little bit off topic of the question. But what would I tell myself going into the first game? I say just find a country that is not in immediate existential dire straits of death. Something chill that you can look around the UI, look around all the various panels, look around and see if doing trading is for you or not, and see if you want to automate that, like I kind of ended up doing. And other than that, just chill and have fun. Don't be stressing, because I was kind of stressing a lot in my first game. Can you only play the political map? No, you can play whatever you want. Right? I said before, the paper map is something that you can have on permanently, and you can just have it so that you only see the paper map. I would not recommend it right now, though I'm sure that by the time you get your hands on it next time, this will change, because it was very difficult to see things like um, fortresses. Any kind of castle, fortification, whatever, was hard to see on the paper map. So people who were playing on the paper map for performance reasons were struggling with that quite a bit. So that will change, I am sure, by the time you get your hands on the game, and you will be able to play permanent and, pure paper map if you so desire. The idea of transitioning in and out from zooming, I also not a fan of that. That's why I said before that I will probably play permanent terrain map when I get my hands on the game properly on release, final optimizations all in. Because I really don't like that zooming in and out, changing maps as well. I want that to be a map mode that I can turn on with a button click, preferably if those map modes are all down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Mr. Sober Irishman, I don't know if that's true. That can't feel it. Okay. He has two questions. How is the economy of the game? I was making between 5 and 20 ducats per month throughout the video, even during the Black Death. I'd be interested in hearing how it feels compared to the EU4 economy. Did I figure out that starting in two markets was a positive or a negative? It was a negative for me. I remember in my leak video, I had somebody calling me a complete idiot because when I made a coal furnace, or the charcoal kiln, I should say, I made it in the Venice market, even though I needed the coal in the Genoa market. What I didn't show is that I ended up setting up a trade to bring the coal to Florence, to the Genoa market. I didn't show it in the video because it did not change anything, because I did not have enough market access, and that coal was siphoned up by probably Genoa or Milan or some other bigger country with more market access. But it is definitely a negative. It is definitely a negative. As well, when doing things like I want to make some buildings, and I have the buildings in the macro builder. Unfortunately, when the buildings are in the macro builder, it's only showing the buildings for that trade node, for that market, sorry. It's not showing you all of them, even though you can click on the map to build them just fine. When they're in the macro builder, it's also showing me the projected monthly profit that I will make from these buildings. And so I would have to swap between markets in the macro builder for the building I'm building. And that was just clunky, and I did not enjoy it. Definitely being in my own market would have been better, or being in a single market was better. And I also had a lot of fun playing as Milan, and playing there with being in the Genoa market and having every single location I had in the Genoa market. Initially, my video was actually going to be of Milan, and then I made the poll and everyone voted for Florence, so I kind of scrapped all the footage that I had from Milan and started again, which is a little awkward, but here you go. There you go. So yeah, no, it was definitely a negative. I think obviously having more markets eventually is going to be a positive. But when you're starting out with, I think I had like 5 locations at the start of the game, and it's split in half. Not good at all. I did have a look into seeing whether creating a Florence market would have done better, and the answer is I made slightly less money. Well, speaking of money though, even during the Black Death, the income didn't drop too much. I do feel that the Black Death wasn't painful enough. I don't know why it wasn't more painful. My assumption, and it is an assumption because I didn't look too deeply into it, I'm afraid, is that while I am making less money because people are dying and not paying taxes, I'm also spending less money on things like food because fewer people are eating. I'm spending less money on the resources required for buildings because those buildings are currently not staffed with population. That's my assumption. I don't know, unfortunately, if that is the case and why that is the case. But you're right. I did not feel economically the impact of the Black Death that I thought I was going to. It did make it more difficult to construct buildings, because having a lack of population to fill the buildings that I'd already built, I think I especially had a location, the one that was making mercury. I think it was like Casenta, the small one on the border with the Papal States Spoleto. Um, that I could not fill. I could not get enough peasants to upgrade into laborers to fill any of the buildings that I had. So that location ended up being pretty much just useless to me because of the Black Death. Um, but yeah, it was more a case of if I didn't experience the Black Death, my income would have gone up a lot more, whereas the Black Death made it stagnate. And maybe Black Death could be made a little bit more devastating. Maybe adding literal devastation to locations would be the fix for that, because devastation is horrific. It is so bad for you. So maybe that would be the fix that I would recommend to Paradox for it. How do I feel about the UI and top bar menus? I don't know. It does prevent the information pretty well. Having it be color coded felt a little weird at first, and I do think that on a aesthetic level, EU4 still is ahead for me. I'm a big fan of the notification windows having different colors, though. Right, that is 100% a. It's not even a change, because traffic light warning system is in EU4 as well, and should be in every Paradox game because it is objectively the best notification system possible. But things like the estates having different colors, that was, I mean, I guess fine. Things like, I will say that the problem that I had, and this was maybe because I turned down the render scale, is that some of the numbers were a little hard to read. Like they were obnoxiously small text, and things like the text resizing based on how much space they had, and that kind of way was a little bit awkward. I think I had a situation where I had like 3 numbers in a row in different columns, and 2 of them were whole numbers, and the one in the middle was like 72.39%. And because this 0.39 was there, like the text got squished real hard, and it was kind of illegible. But for the most part, UI on the top bar was fine. I think the funniest thing that I can say about it is the fastest way to reach the balance tab wasn't by clicking anywhere on my income, right? You would expect, oh, I've got balance tab, I've got, my monthly income and my, my treasury. Let me click on that, open the balance tab. Nope, the fastest way was to right click on one of your estates. Don't know why. Don't have no reason for that. But it was just one of the little quirks. As for menus being easy to navigate, yeah, for the most part, I think the one I had trouble most with, or I guess was a little bit nondescript, was getting into my religion and culture menus. I mean, they were there; the buttons were in the same place, but I always found it just like, okay, well, I click this one, then click this one. It just felt a little bit awkward, and I don't know how I would change that. It was more of a feeling than anything actually wrong with the game. Maybe my own memory forgetting how to find things. But either way. Quick question. At 7:16, when I'm highlighting the army composition, some of the textures look fuzzy. This is the rendering issue. I turned the rendering down. Maybe for that part of the game, when I was just zooming around the map and such, I should potentially have turned it back up, but then that would have come into its own problems, as the game would look laggy for people. It wasn't YouTube compression, or maybe there was a bit of YouTube compression in there, but it was essentially down to the fact that the game got turned down for performance reasons. I want to know more about the challenges around expansion. This is a comment that I got a lot. Your early expansion was blobby. You blobbed quite a lot. How easy will it be to be relatively rich and powerful because you conquered all the minor nations and quickly become a juggernaut? Yeah, no, I see this. I see this. I saw this comment quite a bit, not only on my own video, but basically everywhere. Aggressive expansion or antagonism is not set up properly. It's not set up correctly. I think, and hopefully it will be tweaked and changed. And yeah, I guess we've kind of gone through this comment already. Um, as for world conquest, though, I hope that that's not possible. I truly do. Um, if you are a European and you're conquering into Africa, you are going to suffer horrific losses to malaria. So I think that is one of the breaks on world conquest is simply the inaccessibility of internal Africa. Another one of the breaks is going to be the control system. For Florence, I was suffering control issues after, the equilibrium was found. Basically going from Florence to the northern coast province that I can't remember the name of that I conquered. Um, I was suffering control issues there, going down to I think like 60-ish equilibrium, and that is a very short step away. That had a road. Bear in mind, like I had roads going there. I had also built bridges going there. The distance cost was as low as I could possibly make it, and I was still not getting 100% control. Obviously, later you go on into the game, the better equipped you will be to handle distance, right? There will be better roads, even though they cost an absolute arm and a leg. You will be able to build better roads. You will be able to build ports that decrease distance. All these kind of things will be possible. So, how much they're going to help, I don't really know. I did not play late enough into the game to really see that. I didn't get the next tier of road, for example. But I don't think world conquest is going to be possible for the vast majority of countries. There is one country, though, or I guess one type of country that I do think it is going to be possible for, and that is, surprise, surprise, hordes. Yeah, hordes have the same thing as Imperator Rome had for the Diadochi and for Civil Wars, where as soon as they occupy a location, they conquer it. I think that alone is going to allow hordes to be the ones that can do world conquest. Somebody will figure out a way to make that work. Uh, hopefully not. Hopefully not. But I do think they are going to be the ones to do it. How is the hiding armies in the fog of war mechanic? Is it good or annoying because the AI ambushes you with no chance for you to win? I didn't notice it being a problem. The I had a situation where I knew an army was hiding in fog of war. Right. I was playing as Milan. I was at war with Como and a bunch of the Alpine states, not Treviso, the one that Austria can really, Styria. And he was all up in the mountains, and I knew he was there, and I knew I couldn't see him because of the fog of war. But he was a relatively small state. The problem that I had in dealing with him is he marched into one of my locations that was the capital capital of its province, and it didn't have a fort. And so he started sieging it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go and stop that. So I marched my army up, and I would have reached him in time. But for the fact that the snow came down, and my army was then prevented from moving. Which kind of was a bit of a pain, right? That I couldn't deal with this. So he managed to get a siege that occupied a bunch of territory automatically. Not the province, not the location I was stood on, obviously, but it occupied locations behind me, which felt weird to me. Because he's occupied the capital province, and obviously everything in that province will then start changing occupation to him. But I couldn't, march to go and deal with that, and I would have run out of food if the snow didn't melt and I went and, stack wiped him and took back my location. So that was kind of the only awkwardness I had with that. I mean, it's not really even a fog of war mechanic, it was just a mountain mechanic. But I think What I will say is the AI isn't essential. They're not very good at it yet. Um, I think Lemon Cake made a really good point in his own video where the AI not cheating with full vision means that they are more stupid than the player can be, because we have a memory longer than 2 seconds for most of it. I'm maybe an exception on that one. So maybe there's a little bit of cheating that the AI can be given, and it feels weird for me saying this, because I hate the idea of it, like revolting to me. But maybe that can happen. They can get a little bit of a leg up. I don't know. I feel like it's probably gonna be fine for most scenarios, and I think the place where it is going to be coming in most prevalently is in multiplayer. I just don't think hiding in forests and such is going to be something that you actively plan against the AI, or actively like have the AI plan against you. I just don't see it happening too much, to be honest. Another thing that's been worrying him for months: can the AI just block all the handful of sea lanes to the new world with their navies, so you can't reach it at all? I mean, colonization is not using, navies on map, so I wouldn't worry about that. But if you are at war, can they just block the sea lanes? Yes. If you're talking about the AI, though, they won't. The AI is not. They're not gonna just sit on a sea lane and stop you from moving. That's just not how they function. They're gonna try and blockade you, or if they fear you, they're gonna sit in dock, um, and hide, because that's just how they do be. I don't think it's going to be worrying. In multiplayer, maybe the player is going to do that. Though I will say there are a lot of sea lanes, and I do not think if you are remotely equally competent and have remotely equal navies, if your enemy is splitting up his navy to block multiple sea lanes, you take your entire navy, you will be able to wipe it out. That's just how it works. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think you're worrying over really nothing on that point. Airfan, do I feel that trade income is too strong in the build of the game? It makes sense for a country like Florence or a merchant company, but it seems most every country, from the other gameplay videos he's seen, is making a majority of their money from trade instead of tax. Yes, I think that the AI is bad at trade, and therefore the player is artificially better at trade. This was made really prevalent if you manually did your trades. But the amount of micro involved in that was something I had no interest in. You would basically have to redo your trades every 3 months. And there was a lot of, oh, this trade is really good for you. It's going to give you like 8 ducats a month of profit just from this one trade. Oh, it's going to be great. Blah, 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 blah. But you do it, and then like the next month, you would get a notification of, this trade is not making any money because it has ran out of surplus stockpile. And it was kind of annoying. That's why I ended up just automating everything. Is it too easy to make a lot of money, though? I think... I know generalist gaming had a lot of money from trade, as Korea. But I would say Korea has some really good RGOs, and it has a country that it can export to with a billion different markets in it, with a billion different pops wanting to buy those goods. And so Korea's in like an incredible position trade wise. I think Japan is going to be the same. They're going to be incredibly in an amazing position to do some trade with China. For Europe, while I was making more money from trade, I think as soon as the AI is made more competent, and in that I mean they start building markets day one, because really the problem is the player is the only one that really heavily builds markets and really heavily pushes up their market influence. And if the AI doesn't match that level of dedication to trade, they're going to have nowhere near as much market access, nowhere near as much competitiveness in the market. So they're going to lose out and the player's just going to win. I think if you've got multiple players, like if you're playing a multiplayer, you've got multiple players in the same market, you're not going to be making as much trade as you are in single player. And I hope the AI is made more competent when it comes to trading, because that would then make the player earn less. But yeah, I do think taxes probably should be a little higher than trade at this stage of the game, but for merchant republics, for sure. I will say for myself as well, I very heavily focused on the burghers. As you saw when I did my estates, I think I gave 1 to the nobles, 1 to the clergy, 1 to the commoners, and like 12 to the burghers. Because I liked trade and I wanted it to be more. Though again, automated trade is, I think, the way to go for me. But for specific trades that I wanted to do, to cover weaknesses that I had. So I needed gold for my marketplaces or for my jewelry buildings, so that I could then fill my marketplaces with the jewelry, the production method thing. But for those specific trades, then I think, yeah, you're generally going to do automated trade, especially as you get larger, you get more market access, you get it's so much more clunky to do manual trading than it is to just click a button and let the AI do it reasonably competently. Is the UI final, or is it still subject to change? It's completely subject to change. There was multiple things that we reported in the creator Discord, asking various things like this I don't like, this I don't like, blah blah blah, and then immediately they opened like tickets in their own development channels to work on changing various things. So yeah, no, this is 100% subject to change. Will the general vibe of the UI change? I don't think so, but I could be wrong, right? I don't know. We'll see. Please, Paradox, give us a granular setting for changing the size of various objects on the map, cities, units, etc. As it stands, the buildings and troops look way too big for my taste, and the map in places looks much too crowded. I recognize that this is not a question, but I wanted to answer it anyway because I agree. I thought that unit models were too small. I wanted them to be much larger, and I recognize that it's going to be quite difficult, especially when you have armies of 30 models marching around in tandem. You need to make them fit in every location, which can be a little bit of a struggle if you've got 30 models. But the way it stands right now, at the zoom level that I play on when I'm at war moving armies around, I'm essentially just looking at a rectangle with a number on it for my army, and that sucks because the armies are so incredibly beautiful and flavorful, right? And the fact that you can see every single makeup of your army. I've got a bunch of levies, so I can see the levies. You got noble cavalry, so I can see them, and all of this kind of thing. The cannons, the handgunners, which I didn't show you, but look awesome. All having their own animations when they march and when they fight, and it's cool. And at the zoom level that I play in for war, it just looks like a rectangle, and that is so disappointing. So yeah, for the armies, I want them to be bigger. Maybe like twice as big, honestly, 1.5 to twice as big. And for cities, I can see wanting them to be smaller. I will say on that note, I played in Italy, which is incredibly densely populated with a lot of cities, maybe even too many cities. So I think if you look at other videos where somebody's playing, say, Zlevic's Poland is not as heavily, clumped up together. There's not as many cities. So buildings may not look as big to you when you look at them in that context. But that would be my recommendation to just go and have a look at Zlevic's video. Based on the video, I share the same worry about the learning curve. One of E4's greatest strengths was the barrier to entry was quite low and you could ease your way into the game. If I compare it to Vic 3, how would I describe E5 in this regard? I found E5 easier to get into than Vic 3. Maybe that's because EU5 is a good game, and Vic 3 isn't. It could be that. But EU5 is easier to get into, like 100%. There, even from things like when you first load into the game, it asks you what is your proficiency level at grand strategy games, and by that, it essentially is asking what parts of the game do you want me to automate for you. I do think the best way to do that is say that you're an expert and then do whatever automations you want to do manually. But essentially, trade, for example, I automated. Like every game that I played for fun, I automated trade. To try and learn the system, I did try and do it myself, and then I just found that I wasn't as proficient at it, so I just let the AI do it. I do think it is easier to get into because of that automation, and maybe eventually I will stop automation entirely, but I don't know. I can't see it happening. Is it easy to completely ruin your economy and cripple yourself? Not really. If you set up all of your trades wrong, you want to do it manually, set them all up wrong, then you just cancel them all and then set the AI to do it, and then it's all fine again. There really isn't any penalty in that way. Building the wrong building, not really. You can close them. I think the only way that you can really screw yourself and cripple yourself is giving away the wrong privileges to the estates. Because removing privileges is like 100 stability, and that sucks. Losing 100 stability absolutely sucks. So, yeah, no, you're not going to be able to completely ruin your economy, cripple yourself like you can in Vic 3. The barrier to entry is definitely lower for EU5 than it is for Vic 3. I really do believe that. But yeah, I mean, it's a better game, so who knew? How is the religious mechanics? In Catholicism, were the cardinals being buildings feeling really weird? Honestly, not really. It didn't feel too bad for me after playing with it. I guess because I didn't really pay much attention to it, to be honest. I mean, as Florence, I was a part of the Ghibellines, or Guelphs, whichever one supported the Pope. I can't remember. And as Milan, I was the opposite side. But building cardinals, I don't even think I did it once, to be honest. But I did have a cardinal as Milan. And I don't know, it didn't feel bad. It was just one more of the dozens of buildings that my location had. Right. I think mechanically for Catholicism, the only thing that I really noticed that affected my gameplay mechanically was when I hit 80 not Reformation Desire, but 80 religious points. I can't remember the name of it. I apologize. I was able to canonize a saint, and that gave me certain bonuses, right? Some really good bonuses as well, depending on the stats of the character that I was canonizing. It allowed me to, say, get some stability or get some legitimacy, or, I mean, all of the above. And that was really, really good. So essentially, I was looking to canonize the characters with the highest admin skill because that gave you the most stability. That was good. That helped. It did feel a little gamey though, and maybe it should still just be in the hands of the Pope, who can canonize people. They can still do that though, right? The first time I noticed that canonization was a thing, because I'd forgotten about it, was the Pope had canonized one of my characters. I was like, oh damn, that's cool. Let me go into my religion tab. Oh, I've got 80. Let me do a second one. Right, that's essentially what happened. But it didn't feel bad. It didn't feel weird. It was... did the Pope feel important? Other than reminding me about canonizing my character, not really. They didn't really play a factor at all into neither my Florence nor my Milan games, which are the two countries. Oh, or Naples. I played a lot of Naples as well. I was about to say they didn't feel too impactful at all, but that's a lie, because they definitely felt problematic. As Naples, I allied the Pope, and the Pope kept calling me into war against the Mamluks, who they continually on cooldown declared a crusade against, and then declared the war alone before anyone joined their crusade. So quite frequently the Mamluks would land and occupy Rome, and yeah, that wasn't great. But that's obviously not something that will happen in the full release. It was just a quirk, an issue. But they definitely felt impactful there in a negative way. I'm looking for info on how the map developed in my absence or away from you. How did the AI expand? Was it passive? Did certain AIs blob out of control? Did I see any parts of the world develop in a way that felt particularly historic or ahistorical? So the biggest example I can say of this is the Chagatai Horde. The first thing I noticed was, oh, that's a bit weird. Chagatai has land in Mesopotamia, considering they start like north of Persia. That feels weird. And then I looked around and I selected them so it highlighted the country, and they had bits and pieces of Persia, like random little clumps of land here, there, and everywhere. There is no timeline in the game, and as far as I know, there's not going to be one. That kind of sucks. But so I couldn't tell how it happened, but what it looked like was Chagatai had occupied all of Persia and had a rebellion that a bunch of Persian states then got spat out of, which is a little bit crazy. As for any ahistorical blobbing, France going into the Aragonese territory, Barcelona, etc., they did it, but would they have done that in real life if they weren't busy with the 100 Years' War? Honestly, probably, maybe, yeah. Why? It didn't feel. It didn't happen historically, so it is ahistorical, but it didn't feel historically implausible, right? It felt like something that could actually have happened. The I don't think there was any situation where something happened that was completely out of the realms of possibility, other than maybe no, because this is also plausible. I was about to say Verona conquered Venice, but they would have done that if they could. So yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like there was anything that was completely out there in a crazy way. Is assaulting forts worth it in E5? I saw you failing when you did it here, but was that just bad luck? It was bad for me because I only had 1,000 troops and I only assaulted with 1,000 troops. If I had had my entire levy, things probably would have gone differently. I have heard that assaulting is the meta and it is the way to go. I believe it was Flurry or Habibi that had mentioned that. And they were assaulting forts with like 20, 30,000 and then made forts trivial. Which is good in a way because later on in the game, the AI builds a ton of forts, like obnoxiously too many forts, because apparently they're a little bit too cheap to build and too cheap to maintain. Maybe that's almost certainly going to be something that gets balanced. But yeah, assaulting forts is apparently going to be a lot easier. Though I will say that when you unlock your first cannons, they're not very good. They're just not. They're not there. And I think it required like 11 or 12 cannons to get any bonus to siege speed, and there is no barrage button. So, assaulting forts, you gotta wait for your breach, and yeah, assaulting forts seems a bit more necessary because you can't really speed up siege speed to any great degree. And it also took a ton of boats to blockade any port of worth. Although I will say, maybe that's because I was using levied fishing boats, and they are not very good at blockading. So it could be that. But yeah, assaulting forts is probably going to be worth it, but you're killing your pops when you do that. So I don't know. It's hard to say. How intuitive do these does the UI and controls feel for an experienced EU4 player? Your EU4 experience, I don't think, is going to. I mean, it's going to translate a bit, right? It's not going to be completely new and out there, but it's also going to be. It's going to be. It's not going to be all there for you. So yeah, I don't really know what to say. It helped a bit, but it's not going to help infinitely. The changes in functions. How well do I feel the UI explains player options? Um, Awkwardly. Things like um, when I want to interact with a country, right? If I press left click, it will open the province menu tab, right, in EU4. And if I right click, it will open the country options menu tab. And they're always in the same place. Now, if I right click on a location, it opens a UI that is like floating, right? It's opening it in place where I'm clicking. I generally don't like that. I kind of would prefer it still be opened on a tab locked to the left of my screen, like in EU4. Uh, that just felt weird, and it was kind of hard to find various options in that menu. Um, like if I wanted to offer this guy an alliance, I would right click on his nation, and then I would have to open all diplomatic options, and then I would open another panel, and I don't know, it just felt a little clunky. But I feel like probably having 10,000 hours in EU4 definitely helped in a way, but I don't think it is a colossal aid. And somebody who has no experience in EU4 is probably not going to be too far behind you if you're both starting at the same time in EU5. Does the pop count feel realistic enough? Does it actually set you back being in a lot of wars and losing pop? From the vids I've seen so far, everyone says just steamrolls the AI. But this is kind of answering a question that I've already answered about, antagonism being too easy and control being too high when you first conquer a province location. But pop count is essentially the biggest breaks on it is if you lose a bunch of your pops, you are gonna lose them permanently, right? If I have a levy that gets raised, I think I had about 8,000 in levies as Florence. If I raised those and then they all got stack wiped, the next time I try and raise levies, I'm gonna have a lot less troops, a lot less troops. So that way it hurts, and if you do that a lot and you lose tons of population, you are gonna have a lot of trouble. It could be more trouble though. I honestly think it should be a little bit more painful. So yeah, yeah, that way. I think it will be more impactful later in the game because at the start, when you're raising your levies, a lot of them are coming from the commoner's estate, and those are generally peasants. Peasants aren't in jobs, right? The peasants aren't in your buildings. That's your laborers. So I think before the laborers were added to the game, which happened relatively late in the Tinto Talks dev cycle, maybe it was more impactful then, and now needs to be rebalanced now that laborers are a thing. That's where I feel it's at. The Ottoman cultural buildings should look very similar to the Byzantine style, though. Yeah, this is essentially the all the different art styles for the various different archetypes, and I would agree that Turkish buildings being in the Middle Eastern group is kind of reminiscent of when they added Turkish to the Middle Eastern like culture group, and a lot of Turks got really upset about that. And I feel like that might be the same case here. What I will say is I expect very strongly that as time goes on and the game is released and then we get DLCs, a lot of those DLCs are going to be unit model and building model and that kind of way for culture group. We're probably going to get a Anatolian DLC flavored. This is complete conjecture, by the way. I have no information on this, but this is my assumption: is we're going to get a DLC based on the Ottomans, or I guess on the Beyliks, on Anatolia, where they're going to get their own unique graphics for buildings and units, and it will be as time goes on, the map will just get more and more diverse. And that's where I see it going. Right now on release, though, I think they wanted to make a distinction between Byzantine, who are using the European set, and the Ottomans. Because yeah, I feel like the Romans also need a new set as well, right? So yeah, there's definitely it's an early thing, right? That will change. Maybe we'll get new models by the time of release. I don't know. I don't know how difficult that's going to be, but I do think that's going to be the future of the game in that regard. It would be amazing to see how non-territorial countries work, like banking countries and military orders. And what's the solution for the city of Venice? And can a city, state, or small country be powerful and challenge a great nation? So I didn't play a banking country, and I didn't play military order, and I didn't play a building-based country at all. And maybe that is kind of tied to the fact that I did not have as much time as I really wanted. Unfortunately. Though what I will say on that one is, from talking to other creators, they weren't ready. The banking countries, especially, they just do not have the gameplay that regular countries have. Hopefully that is going to be addressed before release, but I do think that probably we should not. The creators that were in this group releasing the early access videos, I think none of them chose to show banking countries for a reason, and it's just because there was less to show. Is that unfortunate? Is that a pain? Is that good? Probably not. I will say though that the Hanseatic League was apparently a lot of fun, and you could make an absolute killing in trade by being the Hanseatic League. So yeah, in a way, I mean, they're not building based country, but they're something special, I guess. As for the city of Venice, unfortunately, it looks like they're just attached. I don't like this solution. Like I said earlier, in one of my runs, Verona ended up conquering Venice, and it looked trivial for them. So I hope that changes, and I would still prefer it to be a straight crossing situation. I would like to see it be an island, because that just seems like the most realistic scenario. If I'm not, yeah, I just yeah, it felt weird to see Venice get conquered. Can a city state or small country be powerful and challenge a great nation? Uh, yes. As Holland, you really need to be friendly with England, or they will no CB you and land about 60,000 peasants on your in your country, and you have no way to fight it. At least in the early game. What I will say is a small country can absolutely challenge a larger country as soon as they get professional armies, if the larger country does not have professional armies, because handgunners are going to kill it like a 10-to-1 ratio against levies. It's really, really such a huge power spike. As if you are the first person to unlock professional armies, armories, and handgunners, you have enough money to afford them, your strength level is through the roof in comparison. Yeah, professional armies, it really is the balancer. But then when the big country gets professional armies again, then things get evened out again. Back to the status quo of you need to be friends. Does the plague feel fun? No, it's terrifying and horrifying and shocking and awful. But I will say it did not feel. It didn't feel as painful as it should. I think I've mentioned this already. I don't think it was frustrating enough, and I don't think it is going to bounce people off the game either. Probably because it's not frustrating. It's more of a curiosity, and oh, I'm losing this many pops, but it really didn't feel like I was. Like, the income didn't go down very much. The amount of armies that I could raise, honestly, didn't change too much either. I don't think people are going to bounce off the game specifically because of the Black Death. I think, if anything, it's going to be because of the complexity of the game. Gonna throw something random out there. What is it like in Sitges in Barcelona? The food is great. The weather is gonna be great for the Formula One Grand Prix that your brother is gonna go visit. Enjoy that. Hopefully Hamilton wins. And it's his first holiday out of the country by himself. Good luck with that. I hope you guys have a good time. But What's it like there? It was a very quiet town. Sitges is not Barcelona, right? It is completely like it is a it's a separate location in EU5. Um, but it is a lot smaller. It was very quiet, very small. I don't know really what to say. We didn't really spend much time sightseeing, or at least I didn't. When I went to Sitges, I was spending most of my time in the Tinto office or in the bar next to it, and I didn't stay there for very long, so I don't really have that much to say. But have fun at the Grand Prix. Looks like CK3. It will cost like €250. Still only one start date. It doesn't look like CQ3. I have no idea what the price is going to be, but my assumption is 40 or 50 euros. Unless you're talking about DLC, in which case the EU4 DLC policy is actually pretty good. I don't know what to say. It kept the game going with updates for 10 years. What do you want? Right. I quite like the DLC policy. I'm not going to lie. And before you say, yes, but you got all of your DLC for free. No, not initially. I got everything after Third Rome for free, but everything before that I purchased and was happy to. Still only one start date. Yes. This is really the reason that I screenshotted this comment. Still only one start date. Yes, and while that might be a disappointment for some people, I think it is probably the right call still. The I know in Lemon Cake's video he asked for a couple more start dates, and I do see the logic in it, but I worry about diluting the game down too much, and I really hope that they make it a game that rewards you staying with a country for a long time, so you're not, I don't, I want to play Portugal and I've got nothing to do until colonialism starts. Like, that does feel like something that sucks, but you just have to make it so that I've got nothing to do until isn't a case, right? You need to have enough stuff to do. Especially peacetime gameplay, because if Portugal is like super expansionist before colonialism, it doesn't look like Portugal when you start colonialism. So I do see the logic in it, but I am hoping that they improve 1337 more than they make new start dates, if that makes sense. Can any other Beylik in Anatolia take power instead of the Ottomans? Yes, the Rise of the Turks situation allows for more than just the Ottomans to win. Eretnids is another one that I've seen winning, but the Ottomans do seem like the strongest, and I have seen them win more often than not. What's the mission tree look like? So mission tree at the moment, and I didn't show this because it's under construction, and it's probably going to change, and it's probably not going to look anything like it when the game finally releases. But essentially, the mission tree looks like you open your UI, and then you have a list of different missions you can take. The one that I did quite frequently was a capable cabinet, which opened a mission tree that looked like a tree of about 6 missions, where you have your requirements. So the first one was fill all of your cabinet slots. Click that, get, I think it was like 5% efficiency of cabinet modifier. And then the next one was have a head of cabinet. You click that, you get another bonus. But in the game options, you can both turn off missions completely. You can make it so that you only get a bonus when you finish that mission, 6 missions, or you can make it so that you get bonuses on every single mission clicked. Essentially, that's all of the missions are like. Small requirements. It takes like 30 days after you click the mission to get the bonus. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is. And essentially, what I feel is that this system was put in place reluctantly by the devs as a, Anbanar is going to make, EU5 version of Anbanar. We need to have this system in place, this framework in place for them. So here we go. Here's the framework, and we're going to just put some stuff in there just because. I think it can definitely be expanded. And right now there is zero flavor in the mission trees. Maybe that's gonna change. Maybe that could change. I don't know. We'll see. Is the music from the game or from you? The music is from the game. I unfortunately made it a little bit too loud in my video, and I apologize for that. That is my screw up, and it's a screw up that I have made so many times. I am terrible at audio balance, and yeah, I apologize. I'm sorry, but I will say that the soundtrack does in fact slap. One thing I should have mentioned but did not is that the more you are doing in the game, and the more like if you I think it might be related to like actions per minute or something like that, but the music will become more intense the more intense the thing that you're doing is. So you can have a soundtrack that is pretty chill, and then the more stuff you are doing, it will then add new instruments into the same soundtrack that you are already listening to. And then, if you're doing something super intense, then you've got the drums going, and honestly, it does sound really freaking good. And I think, while I think it's a better soundtrack than CK3 for sure, right? CK3 has that kind of intensity thing going on as well. Not to this level though. Things like, oh, I've just declared war, let me change the soundtrack. It's that, but done much better. And I do think the soundtrack slaps really hard. Like, it's really good. But yeah, there's no Sabaton. I saw some people asking about that. There's no Sabaton, but I don't care about that. Are countries that have less unique content still worth playing? Yes, I think they are. So a lot of my experience in the game, like I've played 80 hours, probably close to 60 of that was playing as either Milan, Florence, or Naples. Like I really went hard on those three countries. And I think the amount of unique content that I experienced for them, like, it was pretty early game, so, maybe there is more when you're getting in later. But I think for Florence, I ended up experiencing maybe half a dozen, like, of the unique dynamic historical events. And I got maybe 3 or 4 of their unique advances. Did I feel like I was missing out until I got those? Not really. There was plenty of generic, I say generic, but, generic events that can happen for any country that, especially as the game is brand new for me, did not feel generic. It did not feel like I was experiencing content that anyone else can feel, so it didn't feel uniquely Florentine. And the same was really true with Milan and Naples. Like there wasn't any time where I felt that I was playing something generic and not specifically playing that country. And they all did feel different, even without experiencing the dynamic historical events or unique content. I did do a run as Bohemia as well, and they felt very, very different to the Italians, even without any of their dynamic historical events coming up. Same with the Romans; they felt so different. I regret that I didn't actually play any country that had zero content. Maybe I should have clicked in just to see what it felt like, and I apologize that I didn't do that. But yeah, I think top bottom list of countries I played was those 3 Italians. I played as Bohemia. I played as Brandenburg. I played as Aragon, the Romans, England. I really stuck around in Europe, didn't I? But yeah, they all had content, but again, I did not feel like the content I was experiencing was so unique to my country that was a big deal as why I was playing them. Yeah, a lot of the content you're going to be experiencing is related to your situation at the start of the game, and I know that is such a horrible thing to hear, because that is everything that we heard when it came to Victoria 3, and why, every country is going to play differently because of the started situation. But I think in this case, it's not a lie. So it's actually true this time. So yeah, maybe it's because the game is new to me, but also when Victoria 3 was new to me, it also felt the same as it did when it wasn't new to me. So I do think that starting situation does mean more here. It really does. I want to know about colonization and trade empire expansion. Okay, so colonization, I didn't do any of. I apologize. I just didn't. From what I've heard from other people, though, especially I think is it the student who played a colonizer of Greenland. So you probably should go and have a look at his video for that. But as for trade empire expansion, one of the things that I did end up doing is I mentioned earlier for your marketplaces, you need jewelry. But another thing that you need for it, or can need, is ivory. And one of the only places to get ivory from is from Iceland and Greenland. So what I ended up doing was building foreign trade outposts in various provinces or various locations, and basically a network through various markets until I could get one of the only manual trades I did was to get ivory from the north and bring it down to Italy, and that felt pretty rewarding. I didn't manage to get much because the amount of trade you actually get from these is not huge, but it was rewarding that I could then fill my marketplaces with ivory. So trade empire expansion, that's a small element of it, and I can imagine it would work the same way if I wanted to bring trade from, say, China to Europe. I would be building these trade outposts in other people's countries along the way, and then bringing whatever good I want from China into my own market through this path. And yeah, that felt really, really good. That felt pretty rewarding. That felt like I was making headway and making an impact on my nation, and I assume on other people's nations, because my ivory that I was moving around, well, the AI kind of snagged some of it in France, the bloody bastards. Anyway, the way you get the first CB in the video is the least intuitive thing ever. You start a parliament issue without caring much for the issue itself. You're only starting it to trade parliament support for a CB, and the fact you have to do that to start an issue to be able to do that is weird. Yeah, no, it is. I agree. 100%. I agree. If you're just doing, if you're looking just for a CB to go to war, then Parliament is clunky, and I'd say it's not non-intuitive, but it is something that does not make sense. It is something that I don't think should be the case. I don't think it is right that I am starting a parliament debate for something I don't care about, purely so that I have the support to ask parliament for something I do care about. Actually, the only thing in the parliament that I do care about really is the conduct a census, because that brought my population growth from like 100 to like 800 and a month, and that felt very impactful to the point where I think they're probably going to nerf it, even though I kind of wish they would like buff the other options to be on that level. But yeah, no, I agree. It felt weird, and I hope there is new ways to do it. I don't know if build spy network and then get claim through spy network is the way forward. I do think that is something you're going to be able to do in the late game, though, because I did see that as an advance. So there is maybe potential for that to be a thing, but early game using the parliament does seem to be the only way, other than the fact that outside of the HRE at least, no CB is just the way forward. Wars are just going to cost stability now. That's just the way of things. Yeah, the game looks great. Love the mechanics, automation, and the UI. The only problem is art. Characters look pretty bad. They also seem like they didn't change how centrist values are just objectively worse. So two comments here, really. Characters, they're nowhere near as bad as I think people were fearing from the dev diaries. I really don't. I think They don't look as bad. They are nowhere near as impactful or prevalent in your game. They're just not something that I cared too much about. Um, I will say I kind of wish in some places they were more distinct. Um, because I want them to look a bit more different from each other, so that I can tell them apart when I'm looking for like generals and such, um, or my cabinet members. But yeah, they're kind of anonymous, and I think that's like the opposite of what people were fearing. I think it's like the other direction. When playing the game, I didn't really care about the characters, and I kind of wish that I would care more. I wish they were more prevalent, and I know that's weird, and I think people are going to disagree with that, but yeah, I just kind of didn't notice them for the majority of the time playing. And I guess it is very different when you are looking at a 30-minute video or screenshots where the character are there, so you're going to zoom in and really like pay close attention to detail and all that. But when playing, you just don't. As for centrist values being objectively worse than leaning one side completely, yes, and it's worse than I thought. It really is worse than I thought in that imbalance. One of the events that I got, and I don't remember which event it was or which value ended up doing this for me, but I know that I took a screenshot and shared it with some the other people on the No CB cast, the 3MA podcast that I do when we talk about EU5. You should go check it out. There's probably a video, or not video, a podcast of us talking about our experiences playing EU5 right now somewhere. Just go look at that. Anyway, link in the description. One of the things that I said to them was, oh, I got an event that gave me 20 stability. And when stability is going up at like 0.5 a month, and you're spending it to go to war, and you're spending it for this and that and the other, and it feels really difficult to get the stability up, getting 20 in one big chunk felt so impactful. And I shared this saying, wow, this event is crazy. And was told that basically that is because I was on the far left of one of the values. And being at the very end of it gives you not only benefits like modifiers, it also lets you fire various events, such as this one for 20 stability. Yeah, no, being on the on one edge is objectively so much better than being in the center. The center is nothing. The center is worthless. And yeah, I disagree with that. I think events should be for all areas, all paths on the bar. But yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I do hope they change it as well. I feel that EU5 will be way harder to play as a minor nation compared to EU4. Don't know if more boring too. What do I think? I don't. Yeah, it'll be harder to play as a minor nation, 100%. As a minor, a one province minor in EU4, you are able to do whatever you want. Like there are various starts that are harder than others, but say you're in the HRE and you're a one province minor, that's just a normal HRE gameplay. Is that going to be harder in EU5? Yes, your population is lower. You're making less money from trade. There's no magic money, right? In EU4, you start with 3 ducats base income. Every country. Yeah, you start with base manpower. Every country. In EU5, there are. If you are a small country with a low population who cannot raise enough levies to occupy any other location, you are in dire straits and trouble. There is a way that you can ask people to migrate to you. I saw a lot of people doing that as, for example, Greenland asking Norwegians to come migrate to them. I don't know if you can do that in the HRE, asking other Germans to come to you, although I don't know. Though if you're an OPM and you use your cabinet option to increase migration attraction, maybe that's going to be a way to do things. But yeah, I do think it's going to be harder. I don't think it's going to be more boring. I think it's just going to be more challenging. I think it's going to be more rewarding when you do something like you do finally get, you finally, after 15 years of this, that, and the other, you have conquered a single location. And now you're a 2-location miner. Yeah. That's going to feel pretty rewarding. I don't think it's going to be more boring, though. All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, the leak. As you can see, I got a lot of comments about the leak, and I just want to explain what happened, why it happened, etc. So here is what happens when you upload a new video to YouTube. This is the name of the file. You come with a just default description, no thumbnail, no playlists, etc. No monetization, no video elements, blah 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 blah. Right? And what I do whenever I make a EU5 video or Project Caesar video is I reuse details from one of my previous EU5 videos. So for the video that I made on early access about EU5, I just probably opened up that, and then you have the details that you would like to reuse. Well, I don't want to redo the title, but you know what? Finding the hashtag on my keyboard is a little bit annoying, so maybe I'll keep that in there anyway. Description I'll keep, why not? And you know what? Whatever, I'll just reuse everything. And that puts it in the playlist. And that just puts it in the playlist, and I should have done that. Or when reusing details, but I should have said no playlist. But I didn't, and that was my fuck up. We were then asked by Paradox if we wanted our video to be in a public playlist of all of the creators who were invited to take part in this event. If we wanted our video to be in that public playlist, then I needed to make my video unlisted and sent to them the link so they could add it to the playlist. So initially when I uploaded my video, it was in the playlist, and the visibility, let me just do whatever. Then in the visibility, I made my video private. Read this announcement, so went in to edit the video, say here, go in, edit the video, and I was like, oh, visibility, unlisted. Done, save, publish. Unfortunately, that means that my video is then visible in the playlist itself, and somebody, I don't know who, went and found it. That sucks. It sucks. It sucks so hard. It sucks really badly. I uploaded this, and it was made unlisted around about midnight, and I have recently started a new job where I started work at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I went to bed, and at about 3:30 in the morning, I had a phone call from an unknown UK number. And it turns out that one of my friends in the States, who has my phone number because they were sending me something, went on Discord, found one of my other friends that I played a bunch of multiplayers with, Tulkas, and asked him to call me. And he did. And I said I didn't accept the call. I got a call from an unknown UK number. I pressed ignore. I am, however, an insomniac, and before falling back asleep or trying to fall back asleep, I picked up my phone and looked at Discord to see what was happening, and saw that I had 27 or 28 notifications or pings or whatever, and people were trying to contact me, and then I saw what I was doing, I saw what happened. So I jumped out of bed, threw on some pants, and ran across the house to my office. Funnily enough, this was also the day that my parents were leaving. I said earlier that they left right before we lost access. This was when they were leaving, like a half an hour. It was 3:30 in the morning. They were leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning to get a taxi to go to the airport. I ran through the house, saw them getting, their bags together, shouted, I'm not here for you, and ran past them, turn on my computer, and make the video private. And then I didn't sleep. And I immediately wrote apologies to Johan, the Tinto dev team, the influencer manager, and I was sick to my stomach. I was embarrassed, ashamed, all of that, and I thought that I was screwed. I just leaked, for starters, everything. You've seen the video now, of course. You know what was shown. The thumbnail itself showed the new title art. It confirmed the game's title. Everyone knew what the game was already, obviously. Like it was, but it wasn't. It wasn't guaranteed, right? It wasn't 100%. It wasn't. I just confirmed it, and took the wind out of the sails of the announcement. Thankfully, it seems like the announcement has completely made this blow over. Right? Nobody really has, in the grand scheme of things, the 3,500 people who saw this, the 500 people who saw the rancid clown that re-uploaded it to YouTube, who got copyright stricken by Paradox themselves. You're an idiot, by the way. Why would you do that? To the idiot who kept reposting it to the EU5 subreddit, to the pillock that put it on archive dot whatever, the idiot that put it on file mail. All you guys who did that, you are arseholes, 100%. What's wrong with you? But in the grand scheme of things, it has not changed anything. My relationship with Paradox is unchanged, as far as I'm aware. I'm sure there'll be, I don't know, this will be remembered, right? It's not going to be just go away. If I make another screw up, I do think I'm probably screwed. But from what I am aware of, I'm still in the creator Discord. I am still talking to the developers and to the influencer manager. We are still friendly with each other. I think I still have a working relationship, and I am not blacklisted. So, yeah, I guess that is where I stand right now. I'm sorry to those of you who thought and were hoping that I would get blacklisted, the people who calling me this, that, and the other names. Sorry. Enjoy being disappointed, but yeah, it looks like I'm okay, right? Paradox recognizes that this was an honest mistake. I wasn't trying to get ahead. I wasn't trying to be cheeky and game the system. And yeah, I think because of that, things are fine. And the relationship is not in the bin. But anyway, that's all I have. We've been going for almost 2 hours. I'm sure there'll be more questions that people ask. If there is a follow-up video, it will be in the form of the Tinto Talks videos that I continue to do, and maybe there'll be something there. I also know that I need to make a video on the Prussia flavor dev diary. I've been busy. Like I said, I started a new job, and I'm tired, boss. So, yeah. Everything's fine. E5 is fine. It's good. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.